Hey everyone, so sorry for it being a while. Had a couple things going on at home that took me away from YouTube, and so kind of been a delay. Might be a couple more delays in the future. I'll try not to make them too long, but yeah. So I saw the Suicide Squad, not the 2016 version, but the 2021 version, and I actually really enjoyed it. I'm gonna get into it now.
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it.
I thought you were the crazy one.
I am.
Here's the deal. We fail the mission, you die.
If we find out any information you give us is false, you die.
If we find out you have personalized license plates, you die.
What? No.
Okay, so I was not looking forward to seeing this movie because this year, 2021, if I'm being completely honest, has been kind of crappy in terms of superhero movies and projects and live action anything. I mean, I'm not counting Zack Snyder's Justice League because I kind of always seen that as a re-release instead of a brand new movie. And I probably will eventually review that movie when I find it on 4K Blu-ray, but I don't think it's released on that yet. And so, but like everything else, especially MCU related, has been super disappointing. Probably the least disappointing has been Black Widow, but that's just like a okay film. It's not even a great film like earlier MCU projects. So like I was not looking forward to this because I mean the last two DC films was Wonder Woman 1984, which was a weird movie to me, and then Birds of Prey, which had so many problems that honestly I'm surprised Harley Quinn was in another movie after that. And so I went into this begrudgingly. I mean, I wasn't really excited that James Gunn was doing it because I always saw him as the Guardians of the Galaxy guy, not the Suicide Squad guy. And so going into this, the first thing I kind of noticed is if you did not like the 2016 Suicide Squad, you do not have to see that to be able to follow this, okay? Like a good reboot. But if you're like me and you actually did enjoy the 2016 Suicide Squad, especially the extended cut, despite its flaws, you can still also really enjoy this. Now, I was surprised by this because a lot of movies that have the reboot thrown onto them kind of ignore previous films that weren't that great. Case in point, look at Highlander 3. Acted like Highlander 2 never happened. And then you look at G.I. Joe Retribution, which is basically just G.I. Joe 2. Kinda acted like 1 never happened while still having connections to 1. It's like they couldn't really make up their mind with that film. This, yeah, you could actually go in, it's like, yeah, first one happened, here you go, and watch it, or just like, this is the first in a series, and there you go. You don't have to worry about seeing any previous film on this. And I really enjoyed that. The other thing that was kind of interesting is the fact that the first film was a dark, gritty film with a lot of humor in it. This one is a comedy with a lot of blood and some dark elements in it. So it's almost like a reversal. And this is a generally funny film. I was laughing my ass off quite a bit in this while watching this, and one of the reasons why this was a funny movie is because there were some truly unexpected surprises throughout the film. Like, especially in terms of characters that die. Like, they kind of wanted to establish that, like, no one was safe in this movie. Apart from Harley Quinn, because, you know, they're not going to kill off Harley Quinn. She makes them a lot of money and merchandising, but apart from her, like, no one else was safe. And so, like, literally, you didn't know if someone was going to buy the farm next? And it actually made for a really tense and enthralling time for me. I actually was almost on the edge of my seat whenever something happened, because it's like, okay, who's going to die in this scene? Because it's very possible and likely that someone's going to die in this scene. It's not like watching Justice League, where it's just like, they're not going to kill Wonder Woman here. They're not going to do it. They're not going to kill Batman here. I mean, there's just some movies, it's like, you know they're not going to kill certain characters. This throws that out the window. It's like, yeah, no, any character could die at any moment. And so, it did lead to some pretty good tension. And, like, I'm not always a huge fan of James Gunn. Like, I didn't care for his earlier works, like Slither, and, like, Super was okay, but, like, Guardians of the Galaxy, I feel, is, like, the best of his work. And with Suicide Squad, he did the same thing with the first Guardians of the Galaxy that he did there. And he basically took super obscure characters that, like, no one was a fan of, and that's what he focused his movie on. And I'm pretty sure all of these characters, after this movie came out, are going to start getting a little bit more focus on them in comic books and cartoons and whatnot, because, I mean, the guy did the same thing. He managed to make these super obscure characters actually interesting and fun and relatable, and it's just like, so many things in this movie, if you were to bring it to me, it's like, hey Chris, you want to fund this movie? This is the script. I would just go like, hell no, because none of this is going to work. I mean, like, seriously, a guy who shoots polka dots at people and has mommy issues should not have worked in this movie, but it did. Okay, a young girl who controls rats should not have worked. Okay, the final boss in this movie should not have worked. I mean, thinking about it on paper, it's like, this sounds stupid, it sounds dumb. And as I was watching this film, it was just like, how is this working? This should not be working, but it is, and it's fun and crazy and entertaining, and I absolutely loved it. And one other thing that kind of surprised me, I have to point this out, typically in comic book movies, like 85% of all of them, since they started making comic book movies, if there is like a father mentioned, he's either A, usually an asshole, B, the main villain, or C, was never around. Okay, I mean, there's a couple of exceptions, like Old Man Kent in Superman, you know, I guess Uncle Ben in Spider-Man, but he's not really a father figure, he's an uncle. But I'm talking about actual fathers, okay? So those two wouldn't count. When it comes to, like, actual biological fathers, you get one of those three. Never around, asshole, or main villain, okay? And in this, there was a character where it's like, yeah, no, I mean, my dad had problems, but I had a really good relationship with him. It's like, yeah, nothing. I mean, really solid dad. I have nothing but fond memories with him. It's just like, what's going on? What? I thought I was watching a comic book. Am I being punked? I mean, like, rarely do comic book movies have it where, like, characters like, yeah, I had a great relationship with my father. Yeah, may he rest in peace. It's just like, they never do that in comic book movies. It was so unexpected to me. I know it seems weird that I'm focusing on that, but just like, wow, I couldn't believe it. But going back to James Gunn making, like, the characters really relatable and likable, one of my favorite scenes in this entire movie, it's not an action scene, but it's a scene between Ratcatcher number 2 and King Shark. And I mean, it was like this emotional, touching, like, moment they shared with each other, and, like, I was thinking, holy shit, you made me give a shit about a CGI man-eating shark, okay? You made me care about a shark that eats people. How does that happen? And seriously, like, King Shark, Anawe, is my favorite character of this entire movie. I loved every scene he was in, and I could totally go for a solo King Shark film. I mean, just And the guy who voices him is Sylvester Stallone. I mean, he voices King Shark perfectly. I loved King Shark. I loved his stupidity. I loved the heart he had. I loved the facial expressions. And this leads to one of the surprising aspects of the film. Yes, there was a lot of CGI in this film. Yes, some of it was just okay, mediocre, alright? But all the CGI with King Shark, especially when they got up close to his face and his body, was fantastic. I could not believe how realistic King Shark looked in some of the scenes. I mean, the way the light glistened off him, it was like, oh my gosh, it looks like a humanoid shark. And so, yeah, no, he was my favorite character of the entire film. And I loved him. And speaking of Ratcatcher 2, like, right there, it always throws me off when people are talking about, because it sounds like people are saying Ratcatcher also, you know, Ratcatcher TOO, but no, they're saying Ratcatcher number 2, because this is the second Ratcatcher. So when someone says Ratcatcher 2, they're not saying like Ratcatcher also. I know that seems silly, but it just always throws me off when I hear someone talking about this character from this movie. And so, just it's a funny thing I noticed. And another thing I absolutely loved is, unlike Birds of Prey, the costumes are not complete crap, alright? In Birds of Prey, my biggest criticism of that movie was every single costume, every single one, looked like complete utter shit. It looked like a fanboy that didn't have any sense of style made a shitty cosplay costume for Comic-Con. That's how all the costumes in Birds of Prey looked. I mean, the Huntress costume, Harley Quinn's wardrobe, Black Mask, Black Canary. I mean, just everyone dressed like shit in that movie. And thankfully, in Suicide Squad, they actually kind of felt like comic book characters, the way they dressed. It felt like if you actually pull the character out of the panel and put them in the real world, that's how they would look. And I loved that. And so, I mean, just big improvement over Birds of Prey. Another thing I liked about this movie was Rick Flag. Now, in the first movie, people criticized him. It was portrayed by Joel Kinnaman. He portrayed Rick Flag. And in the first movie, I didn't hate him as much as other people did. But I did notice that, like, he felt like, I gotta nail this role, because if I don't nail it, they're not gonna have me come back, and so I gotta treat this as seriously as possible. And so, with this film though, it felt like he was having a much more fun and enjoyable time, because he seemed like he enjoyed being in this movie, unlike the first one, where it felt like he had to nail the landing. This one, it's just like, if I don't nail the landing, so it be, you know. I mean, and so, one of the things I loved about Rick Flag was he was kind of like the perfect straight man in this movie. And you're probably thinking, yeesh, watch your homophobia there, man. No, when I say straight man, I'm referring to a comedic straight man. If you don't know what a straight man is, like Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Lou Costello, Marx Brothers, early days of comedy, you'd have the screwball and the straight man, okay? The screwball would be the one that's constantly cracking jokes, getting into trouble and whatnot, and the straight man would be the one that would kind of wind up himself for the perfect joke by the screwball. He would wind up the perfect situation, always being professional, always being serious, always like trying to keep a straight face and not cracking any jokes. And in the Suicide Squad, Rick Flag is like the perfect straight man, because some of the best scenes that had me like just laughing my ass off was when he's just trying to keep a perfectly still demeanor and be professional, and the rest of his squad is just nothing but screwballs, and it's just like lead to all of these situations where things just pop off, and I'm just dying laughing at the same time. And so, and like some of the scenes where he's interacting with Harley Quinn and Bloodsport, it feels like he's really just having fun with the character, Joel Kinnaman. And so, you know, that was a nice improvement from the last one that I was not expecting or even hoping for. Now, another thing that I did enjoy was the fact that Harley Quinn was not used too much in this film. In the first Suicide Squad, it kind of felt like she took away from focus on the squad. And again, in Birds of Prey, the Birds of Prey were barely in the movie. The entire focus was on Harley Quinn. So why it was called Birds of Prey, I have no idea. But in this, the Suicide Squad, she doesn't feel like she's taking too much focus off of, the squad. And I actually really enjoyed it. It was just the right amount of Harley Quinn. Not too much, not too little. And, for the most part, I did enjoy the character. Alright? In this movie. A little bit more so than in Birds of Prey. But there was a few times that I kind of felt like it was going to get too much. Especially this one subplot they started with her and, the Cult of Monty's president. When that was starting to play, I was thinking, where is this going? What's the point of this scene? This is slowing down the movie. I don't get this. Why are you doing this? And then Harley Quinn is Harley Quinn, and you're just like, oh, okay, I see what you did there. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Okay. And so this led to one of my biggest criticisms of the film, is that the middle act kind of slowed down and felt a little bit too dragged out. Case in point, there's a scene where they have to capture this character, and they go to this bar, and they have this 10 to 15 minute sequence leading from the bar to when they actually have the character in hand. And honestly, it is good character development, and I don't hate it, but if I'm being completely honest, it does kind of slow down the pace of the film, and was kind of an unnecessary scene. You could have just had a scene where it's they pop out of a corner, grab the guy, and then bam, they have him. So would I remove the scene? No. But if I'm being completely honest, I felt it did slow down the movie a little bit. So maybe have something a little bit more crucial happen in those scenes? I don't know. The other criticism I have of this film is with Bloodsport. And don't get me wrong, Idris Elba is awesome in this movie. He has some of the funniest lines, and I like him in this movie. I pretty much enjoy him in almost anything he's in. But the fact of the matter is, Bloodsport feels too much like Deadshot, okay? He has the same backstory. He has the same background. He has a lot of the same movesets, okay? To the point his costume almost feels the same as Deadshot, but they are basing it off of the comic book, so I did like that. And Bloodsport is an original character, but in the comic books, his backstory is much different than in this movie. In this movie, it felt like they originally were going to have Deadshot in this film, and they just couldn't get Will Smith back, so it's you know what? Let's just change the name of the character, but have the same exact backstory and movesets, and hope no one notices. But we did. We noticed, and I mean, honestly, even if you had the same story, but just had it where he had his more original costume from his first appearance, probably would have been enough. But no, you have the newer costume, which makes him look a little bit more like Deadshot, and, so that really kind of stuck with me. Even though Idris Elba does a great job, he has really funny moments, his costume looks cool, okay? I like some of his toys he plays with. That one gun he uses at the end looks like a Nerf gun, and if I saw that Nerf gun for sale, I probably would buy it. One surprising thing though, I'm so used to them constantly race swapping characters. I just naively assumed that Bloodsport was probably originally a white guy. And no, come to find out after this movie, I looked into the character, Bloodsport was originally a black character. So I was like, huh, kind of surprising. There was also a white Bloodsport who was a white supremacist in the comic books, and there was actually this face-off between the white and black Bloodsport. I don't know if they're ever going to do that. It'd be kind of interesting if they did. But, I mean, like, they did drastically change the backstory of Bloodsport for this film, so I don't know if they're going to do that or not. But, I mean, so, you know, that was a genuine surprise. It's like, oh, that's cool. They're actually sticking to the source material. Thanks, James Gunn. In the end, this was so much better than I thought it was going to be. This was just a fun time. I was not expecting much. I went in and all I got was a silly, comedic, violent superhero movie that wasn't trying to take itself too seriously. It wasn't trying to make a political statement. It was just, hey, let's do this story with this villain. It's going to be batshit crazy, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it. And you know what? I like that. I really appreciate that they did that. So, for that, I'm rating it this. Okay? I mean, yeah, it does have a couple of problems. Is it the best superhero movie ever? Absolutely not. But it is the best superhero movie, new superhero movie I have seen this year, and probably is going to be the best one out of this year, because I don't have a lot of hope for the superhero movies that are coming out later this year. So, I had a lot of fun with this. This is worth your time. It's worth a watch, and I can't recommend it enough. If you can, go see this or get an HBO Max subscription so you can see this before it gets taken off of HBO Max. It's worth the $15 for the subscription. It's worth the ticket price to go see it at the theater. It's a fun time. You're going to have a lot of fun with this film. So, that being said, my name is Chris with 11th Hour Reviews. This has been my review of The Suicide Squad. Should have been called Suicide Squad 2. And that will be all.